Welcome to the OIC, otherwise known as the Omnipresent Information Connection Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Peterson.
And I'm the co-host, Noah Hansen. The Omnipresent Information Connection Podcast is all about your world and your unique walk on this path called life. We present fascinating, life-changing information from around the world that has been validated. We also authenticate the information by providing you with links to where you can find out more about what we are talking about on our show. This podcast includes historically accurate, genuine facts that have helped shape our daily lives into what they are today. In today's episode, Kevin and I will be discussing synchronicity and the power of synchronicity and the role that it is playing in the world today, and not only in the collective consciousness, as Jung would say, but also in the individual consciousness, in our own personal lives, the lives that we may not even be telling our loved ones, our dearest, closest loved ones. Because it is so deeply personal, at least it has been in my life, and I know it is for many, many people out there. Synchronicity. We'll be defining synchronicity and also defining another word that has a lot to do with synchronicity before we give you that definition. We'll be talking about meant-to-be scenarios, divine timing. We'll be talking about my personal viewpoints and the survey that we have on synchronicity for you at inanewway.com that you yourself can take. Just sign up for free on that website and share your viewpoints on coincidence and synchronicity with us. Then to follow up with our last episode, we'll be talking a little bit of how this relates to the power of belief, and just a lot of really great nuggets for you in this episode, because this is one that is a little more centered spiritually, just because it's something that more spiritually inclined people are definitely familiar with. Synchronicity. All right, we'll start out with the definition of the first word, which is coincidence. And I'm reading from the Merriam-Webster dictionary here, and coincidence, it says, is the art or condition of coinciding. That's the first definition. But the second definition is a little more interesting. It says, the occurrence of events that happened at the same time by accident, but seem to have some connection. And I thought that definition was interesting on the Merriam-Webster dictionary, because they're making an assumption there. They're making a assumption about it being an accident, which, you know, that's sort of up for interpretation, isn't it?
Yes, most importantly, nothing in life is an accident. Even when you get into a physical accident, it's still, in true form, not an accident. Because it was an unexpected occurrence.
Unexpected, but not an accident.
Correct.
I'm with you there, Kevin, but I feel like a lot of people that are listening here are going to be a little bit thrown off by that, because it's something that they have never really believed or held true in their own lives. Accidents are accidents. We all make accidents happen. You know, that's a very common phrase, is accidents happen,
right,
in this country.
But if you really think on a deeper level, the accident that you are calling an accident is just a pause. It is a setback. It is a stopping point from what you were currently expecting to be able to do. Interesting
interpretation. I can add on to that, actually, with my own, because, you know, you and I share the same viewpoints on that, but in order to add to that, just my own personal touch, what I believe is that everything that's a negative occurrence in our lives is only there as a lesson. And that's been something that has really changed my life, even if it's not necessarily true ultimately. I believe it is, but even if it wasn't, I think it still would help, and it has helped many, many people in a huge way. It's definitely helped my life in a huge way to not look at something negative as a negative occurrence, but as something that's a lesson, a teacher.
Mm-hmm. And the whole thing it is that you have the power and authority within yourself to either proclaim it as a negative occurrence or a learning experience.
Sure.
But often at times, we take the easiest route possible and we call it a negative experience.
Right.
And then to be able to add insult to injury, then we need to be able to include other people in it so that you don't feel alone within that experience.
Right, yep. Happens all too often.
So if you got that level of empowerment over the situation, couldn't you use that same empowerment to be able to call it a learning lesson?
Right. You know, I'm gonna dive a little deep here and ask you a question, Kevin. In the case of someone really being oppressed, really getting into a situation, let's say like a Jewish person during the Third Reich.
Okay.
You know, in that case, you know, it's such a terrible, terrible thing to have happened and to be happening to a person. How can that still be a lesson? You know, what perspective do we need to have for that to still be a lesson?
The lesson is freedom and the value within it. And the complete outlook you have to understand is that when you are whole and complete as a person, you understand that these people that did these wrongs were not whole and they weren't complete. They were forced, they were ordered to be able to do these things. And that particular situation was a very worldly negative outcome. But it came with a positive outcome. What ended up happening?
Well, you know, many of them were freed when they got taken over, but there's so many that died already. There's so many deaths, so many.
I get it. But the whole thing it is that you can't kill the truth. People still survived the Holocaust, right?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. On top of that, I think this is where you were going to, is that it's never happened again. There's never been a genocide of that nature again.
And there
stature.
won't. And why is that?
Well, it's not allowable. It's something that we can for sure recognize. I mean, people are calling our own president Hitler all the time. And I think that adds a lot of pressure to not allow things to get into that sort of spiral. So it's all over the place, but it's something that it's a lesson, you know, it's a lesson to so many people still to this day.
Everything in life is a lesson. But the bottom line is that how you survive the lesson is how you can be able to calibrate the cost of the value, right?
Sure.
So nowadays, everyone around the world has no knowledge of the Holocaust. Everyone around the world has seen bits and pieces and parts of movies, pictures, that sort of thing, right? But what we all have learned is that you can't kill the truth. No matter how many millions of people that you kill to be able to get rid of, you can't. It's physically impossible. And then on top of that, they only became better, not only as a culture, not only as a group of people, but personally, they were able to do more miraculous things after the Holocaust than ever before.
Right. I mean, look at African Americans in the slavery trade.
Yeah.
After they were out of that, how many amazing things African Americans did for this country.
We don't talk about real issues. We don't talk about real situations. We talk about what's currently popular in the news, and then we run with it. Imagine if we actually had authentic conversations with authentic people talking about authentic situations. It'd be a game changer, right?
Right.
But instead, we talk about shallow topics, about shallow people to be able to get shallow results. I don't talk about Trump because Trump is irrelevant in my life. God is first and foremost in my life, will always be first and foremost, right?
I hear you.
Right?
So what's synchronistic about what we're talking about here?
What's synchronistic about what we're talking about here is that everything comes full circle. You can only go so far into a direction before life then redirects you back to the center of it, right? So whether we're talking about reservations, whether we're talking about African Americans, whether we're talking about anyone within the world, the bottom line is that the solution is that we have to be able to eliminate hate, negativity, and all these other topics that are so easy breedable amongst people that don't allow themselves to take the time to be able to question why it's so, right?
Yeah, and it's a lot more complex than that. I mean, there's deceptive positivity, there's negative positivity too. There's false positives.
Right. So getting back to synchronicity is that we have to be able to change the human element. In order to be able to change the human element, we ourselves have got to be the teachers, the trainers, the motivators, the directors and guides, not only for our lives, but for our friends, our families, our loved ones, those that we care most about, right? Because people follow people that actually produce results, right? So if you're not being the results producer, then they often then go and look for someone else who is, right?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. You're always seeking that leader out in your life.
So the synchronicity in this is that no matter if you want to become a leader or not, synchronicity puts you in place no matter how you feel about it.
Yeah, even if it's just to take that step back and look
Absolutely.
at the situation, take a deeper. It's like deja vu. Deja vu makes you step back and you look at it. It's one of the biggest synchronistic experiences that we can have.
Yeah, because synchronicity is an experience of two or more events which occur in a meaningful manner, but which are casually unrelated. In order to be synchronistic, the events must be related to one another temporarily. And the chance that they would occur together by random chance must be very small.
There's a phenomenon of synchronicity that goes on all over the world, and it's always been happening where a small example in my life is, you're driving down the road and you're thinking about something that you have your mind on lately, something that you're going to do when you get back home. For example, this happened to me the other day. And what responded to those thoughts was the license plate in front of me said a certain word. Now, I forget what that word was, but it totally helped me make my decision as to what I was going to do when I got home, whether I was going to do one thing or another, because I was sort of conflicting in what my path was. But that license plate just happened to, in front of me, totally shift my perspective and help me make a choice. Little things like that, and this can happen with numbers, this can happen with letters, this can happen with something that someone says. Yeah. Synchronicity has come in all shapes and sizes. Synchronicity is a word coined by the Swiss psychologist Carl Jung, who's a very, very famous psychologist. If you haven't heard of him yet, I suggest you check out the links in the description so you can get to know him a little bit better. Especially what he says about synchronicity. And he coined it to describe the temporary coincident occurrences of casual events or acasual events.
Yeah. And coincidence and synchronicity are both defined as striking occurrences of two or more events at one time. The difference is that coincidence is perceived as chance or luck, while synchronicity implies the presence of a deeper intelligence at work.
Mm-hmm. And it definitely does do that. It shows the harmonious nature or the disharmonious nature of what we're doing at the time that we perceive the synchronicity.
Noah, let me ask you a question.
What's up?
Why do we need coincidence or synchronicity in our lives today?
If I'm going to answer that from a personal viewpoint, we need synchronicity to keep us on track. Like I'm sort of reiterating from earlier, but it really does help you just take that step back and look at your life. If you're on a thought process, a mental thought loop that is completely automatic and your thoughts are just going and you're not really thinking about what you're thinking, you're not being very mindful of your thoughts, then a synchronicity that happens just might be that little spark, that mini miracle that helps you be like, whoa, like, what am I thinking about right now? Sometimes those thought loops can really be mindless, and I've noticed this in my life when if I've got a song going through my head and I don't realize it's there until it's going for a certain amount of time.
So is synchronicity a sign then?
Synchronicity is a mini miracle that just shows us that there's something bigger going on, that there's a connected underlying substance to the universe. So, Kevin, I'm going to give my personal viewpoints. Before I give my personal viewpoints on synchronicity in my life, what do you want to say about synchronicity in your life?
Synchronicity in my life has transformed my life from being average and ordinary to absolutely extraordinary in my own eyes. And that's the beauty of it, is that I don't need to be able to brag or boast about, my day, my week, my month, my year. I don't need to be able to showboat what I have or what I don't have. Synchronicity allows me to be able to have the most raw, most real, natural experience between God and I that we could possibly have. Nothing in life is a coincidence between God and I. And when it talk about synchronicity, when I allow my open vessel to be able to allow God's word to be able to fill my soul, I can be able to do all things through God, starting from start to end, absolutely whole.
Are synchronicities going pretty often for you?
All the time, because I communicate to God in the manner for which He sees fit.
It's real interesting. The more you put your conscious awareness on synchronicity, the more it seems that they're going to occur. The more you it's all about being mindful, being aware of what's in front of you, knowing that you are on the right track.
So, Noah, let me ask you a question. What is synchronicity in communication?
In communication, oh man, that's a powerful question in my life, because I've been in situations where I'm talking to people in front of me, but it's almost like they're talking as a collective. It's like they're all together as one voice, speaking as many people, but as one voice that is specifically directly related to me and what's going on in my head, what's going on in my life. And these people they're not even aware of it, but I'm in awe when this has happened in my life, because it's so powerful and so personal. It's intense. It's like God speaking to me through the vessels of many people as one voice. And it can be as simple as the people who are in the background at a restaurant. I've had that happen to me where the people who are talking at this restaurant, at the bar and at the table next to us, we're all synced up in their voices as one voice. And it sounds completely insane. I know it sounds crazy, but until you have that experience, it's hard to really grasp it. But until you have that experience, when you do have it, you can't do anything about it, and you're being spoken to, and you know that you're being spoken to. It's real intense, but that's in communication between me and God, I would say, me and the Creator. But as far as communication between you and me, how we are talking right now, we can be synced up and have more flow in our fluidity in our communication together. Otherwise, it can be choppy and broken up, and we can not really be relating to one another on a level that creates a good podcast. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but more importantly, a communicational connection that produces the results that the listener can be able to value from the start.
All right, so that's right. It's a three-way communication, you, me, and the listener.
Mm-hmm. And so synchronicity might appear or feel like a mere happenstance or happen chance that occurs, which is a perfect alignment with your current thoughts or ideas. For example, you might be thinking about someone you haven't seen in years on your way to the mall or while shopping. You bump into that person, that meetup, was a mere synchronicity. The more things that you put into your brain that are positive, that are life-changing, that are moving you in the right direction, you will start to be able to think that you are putting people in places that they would have normally not been. But what God says is that when you think of them, they will come to you like fishers of men.
That's a synchronicity that's very, very prevalent in the world today. It's where, someone is thinking about their mom and their mom calls them. It's where they're thinking about their best friend and they see someone on the road that looks like their best friend, but it's not. And then they turn the corner and whoop, there they are. It's where you're thinking about a good friend of yours in a whole nother state, and all of a sudden they end up being in the same state.
Right.
Now,
here are 5 powerful signs from the universe. And when I say universe, I mean Jesus Christ personally. Understand that, listeners. Is that the universe, I'm talking about God personally, okay?
Good clarification.
And the reason why I need to do that is so many people are so up in arms about the word universe. Things come from the universe. Well, God created the heavens and the earth and the universe and everything that you physically see today. Mm-hmm. So when I reference a particular space, which is the universe, I'm referencing God. I'm referencing Jesus Christ, right?
Right.
So here are 5 powerful signs from the universe to pay attention to that will help you understand what you're meant to do to become the person you are meant to be.
So Jesus is the one that can shift and change things in the universe. However, the universe itself is where he's shifting and changing things. That's just a clarification there.
Yes, Jesus is the momentum mover.
It's from Jesus. It's from God.
Mm-hmm.
But the universe is where it's carried out.
Right. And the universe can be heaven itself, right?
Your universe, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I hear you.
So, first question, does it bring you joy? Does the synchronicity of the situation bring you joy?
Oftentimes it does. Other times it's conviction. Other times you just to look at yourself and be like, whoa, slow down.
But can it bring you physical pain too?
There can be a synchronicity that includes physical pain and how it appears.
Yeah, it could be a breakup. It could be a hardship. It could be a death, right?
It could be a stubbed toe.
Right. And then third, something stuck in your head. And that thought, that picture, that image, something positive, right?
Right. And this is interesting because you have to be mindful to catch the synchronicities in your mind. If you're not looking at your mind and aware of what's going on in those thought loops, nothing's going to be synced up because your mind isn't. You're not aware of what's going on up there. But if you are looking at your mind, especially if you're practicing the mindfulness meditation, then oftentimes your thoughts will appear very synchronistic to you, the ones that are automatic, sort of subconscious thoughts.
Absolutely.
Carl Jung, when he coined it, it was all relating to the subconscious, too.
I wonder how much change he had when coining that phrase.
It related to collective consciousness and subconscious, and he thought that synchronicity, he would coin that word in order to sort of explain his viewpoints on the collective consciousness. And we'll have a link in the description below for that, to learn about that one.
Absolutely. Number 4, listen to your own inner voice. That little voice in your head that you often at times, and I laugh all the time. I get this little voice in my head that tells me to do this or not do this. And I always ask, is this of God? Is this coming from God? And if not, I've got to be able to literally laugh it out of my system because it doesn't belong to me. And so just like mail, I return to sender, right? And I literally tell God that I had this thought or feeling, right? Mm-hmm. That wasn't righteously mine. That I'm not taking ownership of it, and I'm releasing it back to the universe. Oh, when I say universe, I'm talking about God. I'm giving it back to God, right?
That's right.
And the reason for doing that is that when you do that, you become more mindful of the synchronicities that are happening in your life. You actually start to be able to take charge of when they happen, how often they happen, and why they happen.
Journaling your synchronicities is a powerful practice.
It is.
Journal your synchronicities, the time they happened, what happened right before them, what happened right after, what they were, you know.
And number 5 is very simple. Have that talk with God. Have that conversation with Jesus Christ. Have that communication of understanding that, am I really authentically feeling this way? Am I authentically thinking this way? Am I authentically being this way? Or is there an outside element that is enabling me to be able to be this way today?
Yeah, take comfort, listeners, that it's not every thought that goes through your head is your ownership. You didn't consciously think every single thought that has ever gone through your head.
So when it comes to coincidence versus synchronicity, there are no coincidences in life.
I believe that. I haven't believed in coincidence for quite a long time, actually. It's been about 3-4 years.
And there is no accident ever in the planet that you're unprepared for. And here's what I mean by that, and it's pretty deep, is that for some odd reason, unknown yet to me, listeners, if there's someone out there that can be able to put clarity on this, that would be great. I have had, in my own personal life experience, an accident in several of them, right? Whether it be a car accident, whether I stubbed my toe, whether I broke a finger, something, right? It all comes back to not being mindful of my environment, enabling that situation to occur. So since I enabled it, therefore it cannot be an accident, but a what?
Just a lack of mindfulness.
Right. But what topics are we talking about? Coincidence, synchronicity, right?
Right, it's synced up to your state of mind. It's synced up to your energy.
Correct. And so when you go sideways in your thoughts and your feelings, even for that moment, the word becomes accident, but in reality, it becomes a misplacement of mindfulness and your activity at that moment.
It's a misplacement that manifests.
Correct.
In your own mind, because you weren't where you were meant to be. You weren't where you should be.
Right. And in every situation that has ever happened, I've had to pay a price or a cost to be able to either repair my car or to repair the situation to get back on track. It happens so quickly, but understand that none of it is personal, but everything relates to your personality.
Mm-hmm.
So the more mindful that you are of what is going on and what is happening in your life, the better off you can be able to not manipulate, because that's the negative, right? But to be able to control with God, with Jesus Christ, the outcome for which you have manifested mentally, physically, and spiritually, right?
Mm-hmm.
So any of those three elements that are missing in that train of thought becomes a train wreck, right? Because you can never fulfill something without being able to have the right elements.
I hear that.
Try to make cement without water.
Right. You have to have all the right elements going into any situation to get the perfect outcome.
Absolutely. Yeah, but it's all about keeping things simple. And how you can do this every day is to be able to take down a voice memo, take down a 3x5 note card, and to be able to write things down. Start to be able to examine, start to be able to see the synchronicities that are happening in your life and why they're happening. And so if you want to be more financially more endowed, if you want to be married one day, if you want to be able to have these things happen, you have to create the environment and then be the vessel of the environment for it to manifest.
So that's a shout out to people who already believe in synchronicity. For those of you who do not believe in synchronicity whatsoever, you don't think anything's synced up in this universe, well, if you've listened to some of our past podcasts, we've already presented some of the quantum physics behind how we live in a reflected reality, how quantum physics is actually saying that we do affect the outside world with our consciousness. The more consciousness you put into something, the more focus you put into something, the stronger that influence on the outside world is going to be, as well as on your inside world. That's why mindfulness is such an important practice in our lives. So that would point you to at least an understanding that we do, those quantum experiments that have been done and proven, peer-reviewed, would point that we do live in it would point to the fact that we do live in a structured universe. And at the very least, some of the things that are happening outside of yourself are the product of, or at least influenced by, your inner world, your inner consciousness and focus.
Absolutely.
So if you don't believe in synchronicity, just know that some of your coincidences, quote unquote, are a little bit more than coincidence. They're influenced by you.
Correct. You are the source of your own coincidence.
Mm-hmm. So about 4 years ago is when synchronicity really started happening for me, on a large scale. And that was back in 2015 when I graduated. I was on a road trip, and I was seeing 13 on the number 13 everywhere, I swear, on these license plates. And everywhere I looked, it was 1313 everywhere, and I was kind of scared of it. I was trying to write it off as coincidence because that was my whole worldview before then, but I was trying to write it off, but eventually it got to the point I was seeing it so many times on this road trip. Rest assured there are a lot of signs and road signs when you're on a road trip. But I mean, this was happening I was noticing it like 10 times in a minute, Like it was just crazy so many times it was happening to me that I finally said, all right, my entire world is shattered now, because the entire separation worldview that I had, that the sort of unspiritual worldview that I had, didn't include this being possible. And now it's really interesting. You don't even need a super spiritual worldview to believe in synchronicities. You just have to know a little bit about quantum physics, what quantum physics is saying.
Right. And the bottom line is that there's not a person on the planet that is always 100% negative or always 100% positive.
That's right. And there's not a person on this planet that doesn't experience synchronicity at one time or another.
Absolutely.
It's just how often you are able to recognize it and remember it, that it affects your life, large scale. Sometimes when we come across synchronicities, it will completely redirect your path, even without you knowing sometimes.
And a lot of times your subconscious mind picks it up, and then that's where you become the caretaker of that synchronicity.
Right.
And subliminally, subconsciously, you're aware of it. You don't speak about it. You don't talk about it. But your body then starts to be able to put you into a direction that you would have not normally gone to be able to produce results you would have normally not made, because your own body, mind, body, and soul gets you out of the way. And once you get out of the way of your own thinking, you're unstoppable.
Right on. Let's end it with that message from you, Kevin. Thank you for that. And understand, listeners, that even if you aren't experiencing synchronicities in your life, just know that the more positive steps that you take that you know are directing you and others to a better place, the more that opportunities for those positive experiences are going to come into your life, as well as synchronicity. So we hope that you check out all the links in the description below to get the authenticated information right there for you to do further research. Understand that the opinions shared on these links are not 100% our opinions in every case, but they're just there for your further research and understanding.
This has been another life-enhancing authenticated podcast aired by the OIC and brought to you by the faithful OIC sponsors and contributors. Please tune in every week and subscribe to our podcast. And while you're there, explore our website with all the posts, videos, and podcasts that we have created with you in mind. While you're on the journey through our website, you will see our Patreon page where you can become a faithful contributor yourself with the freedom to be a part of our team today. Thank you.